Hello, today we're going to take a look at the TRN Conch. Now it's possible there's no box here and I'm about to do a review when you guys can see nothing but this mat. I'm kind of dumbfounded in a way, and I've been putting this review off for about a week. And in advance, let me apologize for the quality. You're only going to see one hand. It might be a little shaky. You might hear a fan in the background from a PC. Fortunately, I'm not home currently, and I had to get this video out. I did want to do an end of year video, but the more time I spend with the TRN Conch, the more I feel it deserves its own video. This was something I was just gonna toss in where I kind of do, at least from the stuff I have, like my favorite sub 50, favorite sub 80, sub 100, whatever. Like my favorite buys of the year as far as budget audio goes. Now, I got this, the TRN Conch, probably 2 weeks ago. I think when I bought it, it was $31 after tax, something like that. It was super cheap. And I got it, and I was, well, to be completely upfront, I was impressed. I enjoyed it. But I was comparing it to a class that maybe didn't deserve to be compared to this. And I just kept putting it off, wasn't sure. And I recently just seen a review of somebody saying they prefer the Conch over the EA500. So before I go any further, like that was something I ended up having to do. But before I go any further, let me just show you kind of the box it comes with, what you'll get. As you can see, this is kind of the outer sleeve. TRN Conch 10mm DLC driver. Now it's not it's a composite DLC. It's supposed to have some, I imagine, just a typical driver underneath with a very thin coating of that diamond-like carbon stuff. This is 30 ohms. Now it wasn't until, what was it, yesterday that I actually, before I left, that I actually decided to measure the impedance of them, and I got 28.8 dead on left and right channel. Again, $35, already off to a good start. They completely measured exactly identical. Normally, even with stuff much more expensive, there's a little bit of a give. But anyway, sleeve, really not much on it. And that's all for the info on that. Now, inside the sleeve, you'll have this box. Inside this box, you'll have your tips, your cable, this little puck thing here. This, it looks like in the videos, it looks like this cheap piece of plastic. But it's actually really nice. It's surprisingly nice. I don't even know. Yeah, I think it's plastic, but it's surprisingly nice. Not a lot nicer than it looks. And as you can see, I have a little assortment of what all comes in. You'll have ends for the cable. You get your 2 phone tips, which are very nice. Like, that is a very pleasing sound using the phone tips. You get these, I guess they're T-tips, very sticky. Unfortunately, this is the large, and unfortunately even the large doesn't fit me too well, so I had to use something else. You get these kind of generic thin bore black tips. I do not recommend these at all. I just don't, personally, I don't find much use for thin bore tips, especially thin bore tips with a relatively long stem. Like, they come in handy if you have something that's kind of has too much body or not enough treble, but that seems to be pretty rare at least anymore. You have your interchangeable nozzles. What's the top one's transparency? The middle is the one that has the most bass and the most warmth. I can't read what it says through the screen. Atmospheric immersion, and then at the bottom you have reference. Reference sounded pretty darn good to me. I actually really like the way that sounded. The transparency was way too thin for me, and the atmospheric one is kind of like a warmer, maybe a little bit more full-bodied reference. Okay, again, let me show you the cable. The cable has been getting a lot of praise, and it's a decent cable. What I like about it is this end. Now, unfortunately, my end was crooked. I did end up getting the connectors to seat in, but that you can tell they're rushing putting these together, at least the cables. However, it works, and it actually sounds really good. Balance is definitely something I recommend with the TRN Conch. Okay, so you get all that. Chances are you're going to end up using the red nozzle. I would highly recommend running these balanced if you can. If you're going to use tips, the foams are a very good choice, and so are the these T-tips. They actually do sound very good. It's just unfortunately doesn't fit me. And then you also get the IM, the TRN Conch. There's a nice big opening there for air to get out. Another little vent there, but everything else is completely sealed off. So you get those, and as you can see, oh, this is something I hate though, that connector, that Q connector, I can't stand that. However, the cable kind of makes up for it, and the main reason I actually bought this and was willing to take a chance on it was because of that cable. I do have, for instance, the Simgot EM60, same connector, and it would be nice to have I wanted a balanced cable for that, so I figured I'd get that. And I forgot to mention this, I'd see if these would fit the EA500, which I have here since they both have nozzles that come off. Unfortunately, I'm one-handed right now, so I won't be able to take the nozzle off. But it's the same as the EA500, if you've seen that. And so these will not thread onto the EA500. I tried, that's kind of that was a bummer, but the fact that these turned out the way they did, I could live with that. Now, originally I was comparing them to the EW300, the Simgot EW300. Under $40, it really doesn't get much better than this. They're great. I did have QC issues with mine. I had to use a couple sets to build one pair that had the tolerances that this had, or that the EA500 had. Now, after doing that, again, they sound wonderful. Super tight, super punchy, very clean, nice level of detail. Personally, I do think there is a noticeable difference. Noticeable difference in resolution and just flat out quality when compared to the EA500. So in the beginning, I didn't even think to compare the EA500 to these TRN Conches, and I was back and forth, and I'm like, man, the TRN is just walking the EW200s. It's not even close. Like, these were so much better, and I was struggling to find any real competition because the EW200 and the EA500, they share a lot of similarities. They both have that energetic, speedy sound, and when you put either one of them there, it's such a unique sound. Like, you know, like, okay, this is a Simgot EW200 or EA500. You just know it. It has that nice, speedy, quick sound to it. And the crazy thing is, when you put these in the TRN Conch, you're like, wait a minute, it sounds like it's completely related to these two. It sounds like it belongs in the family. And what's crazy, even though I was thinking this was walking this, and I definitely think the EA500 is better than the EW200, I started A-Bing these two, and I'm like, they are so close. It's crazy. Like, sub $40, detachable or cable with a modular end. You get the changeable nozzles, a decent selection of tips, that cable, and it's like, it's nuts on it. It exceeded one of the best in its price range. It's going toe to toe with the EA500. Like, I was blown away. And what's crazy is, I would put them on par, and I could absolutely see somebody preferring the Conch. Like, you start going back and forth, and you hear the similarities. They sound so similar. Mind you, this I kind of modded, so mine is, this is the red ring nozzle, except I have a different kind of foam stuffed in there, so it's a little bit more narrow, but not by much. Like, it's such a small difference, but the bass, much more body, and much more rumble in the bass, more body to the bass, but yet it's still super punchy, super quick, and nicely separated. But going back and forth, this, every time I put the Conch in, the sound stage and separation would just expand greatly. The main drawback is, whereas this is speedy, much like the EW200, the EA500 is just speedy, punchy, nicely detailed. It's still smooth. It's a quality sound. This has all that smoothness, all of that, and then there's this one tiny little peak. And I guess that's what the graph shows at 8K. I don't know, for me it sounds like it might be a little earlier than 8K. What do I know? I'm not a measurement rig, so I would believe the graphs. But you do get a little bit of, like, it's not full-fledged sibilance, but you get a taste of it right at the end. And it's only apparent in some music, some songs, with some singers. Like, for instance, a lot of rap I listen to, don't hear it at all. But when I listen to, crap, where's the phone? What's it? Cabello, or whatever the hell it is. Whatever her name is. She has this album that brings the truth out of anything you use to hear it. If you have peaks, if your headphone or IM has peaks, you're gonna notice it with her. It's gonna throw off her voice. It's gonna make some of it sound a little edgy and painful at times. And it's some of those few cases where I notice the peaks in this. A lot, I'd say 7 out of 10 songs, you wouldn't even notice that 8K peak is there. But then it's those special cases where it becomes apparent and it kind of takes away, but it's so minor. Like, you gain extra sound stage, you gain a little bit of extra separation, even compared to the EA500. There's tons of detail. It's equally as detailed as the EA500. And as far as like, it's more detailed than the EW200. I know there's people that swear these two are very equally detailed. They're not, at least not in my opinion. I can hear more texture, more enunciation when in the words through the EA500 than I can through the EW200. And the saying goes, well, here, like that detail actually leans a little bit towards the EW or the conch. It's less so when I remove the foam from the red. Like, it gets a little bit of sound stage back, and it's because it loses a little bit of that body, it gets a little bit more of that detail back, the texture and stuff. But this has more body, it has more bass. Like, it, to my ears, at least with these tips, it has more bass than the EW200. It has the same punchiness as these, except it also has body. It has rumble, so you're getting the speed, the rumble, getting a nice sound stage, great layering, great separation. Just not so much 3D, but certainly way more 3D than this. Probably on par with this as far as height and depth and all that. This does make a nice circle around you of music. Very small, but compared to the EA500, a little bit wider. Like, I don't know, I find it hard to recommend. Then let me not even recommend it. I just, for my taste, like, you should be choosing between these two and not these two. Not the EW200 and then the conch, the EA500 and the conch. That's how good these things are. And they're $40. It's $35. It's crazy. That's why I'm sitting here like, maybe these aren't real. Like, it's crazy the value here. You get that cable, you got the sound. Like, someone could easily buy this, be done, happy, until you're up in the $200 range and up. Like, you can completely skip the EA500. You could certainly skip the EW200 if you have this. I'm like dumbfounded. $35, and we're getting something that impressed me at $80. Getting a better cable. I think you got better tips with the EA500. Like, I ended up using very similar tips to what came with the EA500 on these. And I know these look really long, but they're really not. They're actually roughly about on par with, they're about just as long as the EW200. Which one? Let me find the other. Like, not much difference there. So anyway, I'm gonna try to wrap this up. What else can I explain? Again, this is the conch. If anybody's familiar with the EW200, EA500, the conch is that sound. It's that type of experience. More bass, equal quality, more quality and detail than the EW200. Like, we're talking equal in a lot of ways to this the EA500. And as you can see, the EA500 even has that vent on the inside there, none on the outside. And that's kind of what the conch does. I wonder if that's kind of what gives it some of what it has special, because what makes the EW200 different in a lot of ways is it doesn't have that. It has this top one, so it's a much smaller amount of air than what's there and what's there. Like, that definitely more air in my opinion. I don't know. It's, if I had one, again, that one complaint, the one and only complaint, the only thing that stops these things from being even out of the $100 category is that 8K peak. And it's not so much that it's a painful sibilant, it's not anything excessive in a fatiguing way, but it can, depending on what you listen to, it has the potential to be annoying. You won't get a headache, but it can get annoying. But chances are that you might not even notice it. Like, most of the reviews I've seen on this, most of the people who reviewed it didn't notice it. They'd see it on the graph and say, oh, maybe it's most likely an artifact, or maybe I just don't hear it in that region. But for me, I notice it, and again, it's specific to the type of music, the singer, the voice, the instruments, the way things are recorded. But so I'd still give it, you got a 7 out of 10 chance of playing and listening to music that doesn't have an issue in that area, and you won't hear it, you won't notice that peak. But three times out of those 10, you are probably going to come across something that's going to make that stand out a bit. And again, it's not super excessive. If I had one complete, like, it can at times add a little bit of artificialness to a female's vocals, but it's only at the very end of the tail edge. It's interesting, whereas the EA500 doesn't have that issue, and it just sounds natural all the time. The EW300, on the other hand, again, doesn't have that issue, but when you're comparing it to the EA500 or the Conch, the vocals sound far less natural than both of those. Way less body, a lot thinner, a lot more brittle. These, with these tips, are nice. It kind of saturated the sound. I noticed when using these T-tips, nice bass. The bass was actually very warm and saturated, but vocals and treble were kind of dry, a little, not necessarily grainy, but almost scratchy in a way. Switching to these softer, thicker silicone tips, and also getting the driver a little bit further away, kind of saturated the sound and made everything sound smoother and more similar to the quality and smoothness that's offered with the EA500. I'm just going to leave it at that. $35. I mean, even if you don't believe me, at that price, it's worth it. Like, just to try it. You can always return it, or you could just buy it for the cable like I did and be surprised by the quality of the sound that comes out of these crazily cheap solid IMs. I don't know what TRN did here, how this happened, but it happened, and it's great, and it's just unfair to the rest of the market. How can they do this for $35 when we were so happy about $80 doing that? It's mind-blowing. Anyway, that's about all. I don't know what else I can touch. Oh, okay. Okay, the sound with phone tips. Now, that definitely helps that little peak region. It helps, even kind of helps, it makes everything a little warmer, a little more full-bodied, makes things sound even more natural. However, it seems to take away a little bit of that speediness. You kind of start walking away from the EA500 sound and start approaching something like the sound of the EM6L. Just a warmer, smoother, but you're still getting crazy detail, and you get even more sound stage. And I think it's because with these, these make it so much further out of your ear, and I honestly really like the sound with these foam tips, but because they stick so far out of my ear with those foams, I just don't like wearing them that way. What else? Okay, now that's it. Hopefully I can get this part added to the other part since I accidentally hit stop. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys give the TRN Conch a shot, and let me know what you think. Anyway, appreciate it. Hope everyone has a nice day.